have a son who's a teenager with a form of centronuclear myopathy caused by a variant in the Titin gene. I also work with the Congenital Muscle Disease International Registry and the Joshua Fraze Foundation. I am also an occupational therapist, and I also have, my family has participated in a tissue donation to the CMD tissue repository. Thanks everyone for joining today.
Thank you, Sarah. Now, Patty's with family, so I'm not sure if she's aware of the time. Oh, there you are. Okay. Would you like to go ahead?
Yeah. We're actually down in Florida for spring break, but I popped in the background. I'm a board member of a foundation building strength in myopathy, and I work at Baxter Healthcare in Illinois. Baxter makes the drug for another genetic condition called hemophilia, so it's a blood clotting factor VIII drug. And we've also consented to
Thanks, Patty. I think your cell phone was cutting out a little bit. Did other people have a hard time hearing?
Yes. No, I'll go here.
Okay. Well, just so that you know, people might not be able to hear you later on when you're doing your story. If that happens, I can...
Is this better? Is this better outside?
Yeah, that's good.
Okay, sorry about that. A lot of the buildings down here are made of cement.
Oh, of course. Yeah, we got the gist of it. You were cutting out, so we were hearing part of sentences.
Okay.
Great. Okay, thank you so much. So today's discussion will basically surround these three ideas of giving you guys the background, and then the community response, and then talking about the Get Counted initiative. Patty, would you like to take this?
Jump in?
Yeah.
Yeah. So when this really started, when a bunch of us really started talking about this, there was a World Muscle Disease conference, global conference that was held at Stanford University. And there were 40 scientists and physicians from 16 countries that came in. And we asked them to come in a few days early. We paid for their flights and really got them there and said, okay, you're going to be meeting and talking about all of this. You know, we're really interested in promoting treatment development. What can we do as family liaisons to help really promote treatment discovery? And their feedback to us was, listen, we need more information on your community. You know, it's very hard for us to do our research without any data. And that really sparked the CMD-TR registry, and getting that, you know, really populated with information. And we also need more muscle tissue so that we can do our research and test treatment. So that was their feedback, that they wanted more information on us, who we were, how old we were, just data and information and tissue. And so our response was, hey, we can do that. You know, we just need to educate people, get the word out. You know, people are so kind and willing to help. They just sometimes don't know what the researchers need. So that's when we really started the whole Get Counted campaign that Stacey's going to talk a little bit more about, with the CMD-TR and the tissue repository. And we really said that doing nothing was not an option. We didn't want to hear their response and not act.
Exactly. Okay, so briefly we'll just go over kind of the Get Counted concept. So we came up with this with a team of volunteers, and we also had a couple of interns that work for Cure CMD help out with the graphics and the videos that you might remember seeing that were posted on Facebook over the last year. So they were really pivotal in designing what this looks like. And basically there were 4 objectives that we outlined when we first began. Get connected, get registered, get consented, which is our current objective, and then get donated in the future. So this third objective, get consented, what is that all about? Well, it's to educate people about the importance of making tissue available for research. Human tissue is needed to test theories and treatment drugs. It's really the bridge between animal and clinical studies, and we see this as a way to advance drug development even faster. We are the way to centralize collection, storage, and distribution of tissue. And we are really focused on getting that tissue to both seasoned and new scientists with important ideas for treatment and for improved care. The CMD-TR is a patient family initiated, funded, governed, and managed tissue repository. Anyone who's had a muscle biopsy can choose to have it transferred. It's really about a 5-minute consent process, so it's very quick and easy. And in a lot of cases, we also can help that family find another suitable research facility for leftover muscle biopsy tissue anytime that makes more sense. Tissue that is already being used for research will stay exactly where it is, and we'll talk about that more a little bit later. We need samples from a lot of different people. So in asking scientists what is sort of the minimum number of samples that would be useful for their studies to have statistical significance, and the number that we're hearing excuse me, is about 5 separate donors per study. So that would be 5 unique samples that would all match whatever subtype that scientist is interested in. Basically, more tissue banked means more available for research. So that's what we're trying to do. So we talked about goal setting, and well, we know we want to increase the number of consents because that will then increase the amount of tissue banked. But you know, what should be the goals? So we sort of decided that 100% increase for each subtype seemed reasonable. I put in a graphic here just kind of showing the proportions that are currently banked of some different clinical subtypes like NM, CNM, CMD, alpha dystroglycanopathy, and then CMD, NOS, which is not otherwise specified. So the idea is we will probably see those proportions stay pretty similar as we increase consents and tissue banked. So, for example, if a specific subtype has 1 specimen currently banked, the goal is to have 2 banked at the end of this campaign. If that subtype has 5 banked, then the goal is to get 5 more for a total of 10 banked. Now, we did manage to exceed our goals that we had set up when we initially started this, and in the last year, instead of banking what we thought was going to be anywhere from 5 to 10 specimens, we were able to do a much greater amount than that just because of the awesome collaboration that we were able to do with communities. And I just recently went through the process of an amendment at our tissue repository through the review process in order to let them know that we were exceeding goals on the number of people participating. We have to let them know that ahead of time because we have to be doing exactly what we said we would do at all times. So if that ever changes, like in this case, we have a lot more people participating than we had expected. We need to go through a process of having that approved through our institution to have more people participating. And really what we need to do now is get sufficient numbers of each subtype. So like I said, if we have 1 specimen banked of a particular subtype, 1 specimen is not particularly useful for a researcher that's interested in that subtype. So we want to get enough specimens banked of that subtype so that we can offer that in a catalog format and be able to say, look, we have 5 specimens of this particular subtype that a scientist would be interested in. And that's worthwhile for us to distribute to the scientist, and certainly something that scientist would be very eager to have. We, at this point, have had 3 scientific uses for the tissue that's banked, which is really awesome. Like I said, in order for us to be able to have scientific uses for it, we really have to have enough banked of each subtype. And we're starting to reach that sort of critical mass number for some of the subtypes, like Nemaline myopathy and CNM. But like I said, more bank tissue means more tissue distributions, which is what we want to be able to do, get the tissue to the scientists so they can use it for treatment discovery research and really improving care for everyone in the community that is affected. So with this campaign, we wanted to outline the outreach audience, which is really parents and individuals who have CMD, the dystrophic form, CM, which is the non-dystrophic form of myopathy, and CMS, which is congenital myasthenic syndrome. And all of those subtypes are listed on the CMD-TR website as well. And the approach is just basically we need to communicate what is needed to the communities, and we know what that is now because of the feedback we have been getting from the scientists, and we need to pass that knowledge on then to the communities. Get the community involved, track our progress, and really just stay the course until we can get that minimum number of tissues banked so that it's really useful for scientists. What we'd like to do next is have some of our participants just share their personal experience with consenting and donating to the CMD tissue repository. And Sarah, would you like to go first?
Sure, hello. So like I mentioned earlier, I have a son with a form of congenital myopathy, and I started to understand, like Patty was describing earlier, about how important it is for our researchers to get the tools that they need to work towards a treatment. And so I started to get more involved. And I was working with the team of a couple of great people in the early stages to help the tissue repository become a reality, which was very exciting. So my son is also a donor to the tissue repository. He had a spinal fusion surgery for scoliosis, and at that time it was very easy for the surgeon to retrieve a small piece of muscle tissue to donate to the tissue repository. And some of this tissue went to a research lab, and then I worked with Stacy to have the remaining tissue transferred to the CMD tissue repository last year. And Stacy made the process extremely easy. It took very little time, and she handled everything and managed the tissue transfer. My son, because he's a teenager, also needed to sign the assent form agreeing to the tissue transfer. So I know that having this tissue available is really important for researchers, especially my son has a very rare form of centronuclear myopathy, so this is true for almost every subtype. So every donation or every consent really makes a difference. And so based on my personal experience, I can share with you that the process was easy peasy. So thank you, Stacy.
Thank you, Sarah. Okay, Patty, would you like to go next?
Sure. I recently consented, I'd say within the last 2 years, and met Stacy, and we talked a little bit about how important it was. Even though my daughter doesn't have a surgery coming up, consenting now makes a lot of sense for us, because then down the line, if and when that opportunity becomes available, I've already read the forms, I've become educated, and then we're just that much further down the line, and we can really focus on the surgery at that time and let Stacy do all the background work. But our experience is a little unusual, which is why we're on this call. My daughter was born in 2006, but was diagnosed in 2008 with nummuline myopathy. In 2008, we did do a muscle biopsy, and our hospital saved it for a little while, but then once we went looking for it later, when we realized that we wanted to try to donate it and have it, that they actually kept it a remaining piece, we wanted to do something with that. They had actually thrown it away, which is very unfortunate. At the time it was thrown away, there was no CMD-TR. We didn't know about consenting or anything like that, so it wasn't possible, but this is what we're trying to make sure does not happen to any fall, is that this tissue just gets discarded when it really could be helping all of us to advance treatment discovery. And so it's really something that this is an invaluable service, the CMD-TR, and really something we want to get out to the muscle disease community, that it's out there, and let's spread that awareness and really get it populated with the tissue that exists and that's already out there, so that we can do our part to help the research discovery.
Thank you. Now, I heard from Brandon that he is with family right now and didn't think he would be able to get on the call. Sarah, would you like to say a few words about Brendan?
Sure. Brendan was one of the early people involved with the tissue repository, and his experience came at the time when he and his wife were making a very difficult decision to withdraw care for the care of their daughter, who has a severe form of CMD. And he currently serves as a family advocate for the CMD tissue repository. And he previously discussed the possibility of donating tissue and or organs when his daughter passed away. So at the time, he did not expect to have to make this decision when he did, and he was unsure if he was making the right decision until he spoke with Stacy. And so Stacy spent a lot of time with him, and she was very professional and polite and walked him through the procedure and the consent process. Brendan is someone who works in clinical research, and so he understands the importance of a strong and professional consent process. And he felt that the whole situation was handled with a lot of respect for his wishes and in regards to his family's wishes. And everything was explained in a process that made the decision very easy for not easy, but easier, I should say, for his wife and him. And he believes that donating tissue is an important step in the goal towards finding a treatment or cure for the various congenital muscle diseases.
Thank you. Melanie, are you with us today? Melanie had joined us on Wednesday, so I wasn't sure if she would be with us today or not. I can just say a little bit about Melanie's story. So she provided this write-up knowing that she probably wouldn't be able to attend all of the meetings that we were hosting. Melanie has a son with central nuclear myopathy, later confirmed to be X-linked myotubular myopathy. She is the chairperson for Where There's a Will, There's a Cure. That's a foundation that was established specifically to try and find a cure for the form of muscle disease that her son happens to have. She was introduced to the CMD tissue repository, was very eager to get involved, and worked with me to complete the consent process. And she had already registered with the CMD-TR, so I had the information that I needed to go ahead and contact the hospital where the procedure had been done. And what I do at that point is I explain to the hospital what the family's wishes are and the purpose that we serve, and then I make arrangements directly with their pathology department to have the tissue transferred. Once I went through that process, I sent an email to Melanie, as I do with all families, to let her know that the tissue had arrived and it was safely stored with us. And she was very, very happy to know that that process was done successfully and that her son's tissue was now going to be available to be distributed to scientists that are looking for a cure for the form of disease that her son has. Carol, are you with us today? Carol Conway?
Yes, hi, I'm here.
Hi, Carol. Would you like to go ahead and talk about your experience?
Sure. I think I agree with everyone that Stacy has been really helpful and professional and yet personal in the whole discovery process. I think that I and my family represent a different population of people because I was born in 1963 and didn't have a diagnosis until 2012. But I think there are a lot more people out there like me, and I think this putting this out there is super important right now because we can gather everybody when they get the diagnosis. And I think Patty's right when she says that consent is important now, even if you don't have plans to have a surgery down the road at this point. I found out really quickly what I had because we were trying to diagnose my daughter, and they decided to do a biopsy with me because I was not 12. And then I found out it was myopathy through a blood test, or through the muscle test, and then defined it as TPM2 through a blood test. And then I got in touch with Patty and Stacy via Facebook, and opened up this whole community of the tissue registry and sending tissues out. Found out through my neurologist where it should go, talked to Stacy, she sent back information, and she really took it all from there. And because I'm really busy, work full-time, raising a teenager, etc., the best part for me was that all I had to do was sign a few forms, and the rest of it was taken care of, and I appreciate that. It was really simple and really important.
Thank you, Carol. Lucinda, are you with us?
Yeah.
Okay, would you like to go ahead?
Okay. Hi, my name is Lucinda. I'm 17 years old, and I have Nemaline myopathy. When I was 5 years old, I had a muscle biopsy, which is when I learned my diagnosis. I realized how life-changing a treatment could be, and so I really wanted to help. For the CMD tissue repository consenting process, all I had to do was sign the assent form for kids 7 to 17 years old to say that I agree to have my tissue transferred. And the way I see it is I already had the biopsy done, so why not transfer it to where it can be used for research?
Thank you. Now, Lynn is out of town. So, Sarah, would you like to just say a couple words about Lynn's experience on her behalf?
Sure. Lynn had two different experiences. One was in regards to having a surgery and it for her daughter, and it was incredibly simple for her to plan ahead with an upcoming procedure for her daughter to give a donation while her daughter was having Vector surgery. And then additionally, she knew that her daughter had had a muscle biopsy previously, and she wanted to encourage people that if you or your child had had previous procedures done, even if it was several years ago, and even if you can't imagine that the tissue would still be available, that it's certainly worth signing a consent form and letting Stacy do her magic to track it down.
Great, thank you, everyone. As mentioned previously, some of the people on the call today are also family advocates of the CMD Tissue Repository. Brendan is one, Sarah, who just spoke, and then also Allison Fraze. These are very dedicated people who were there from the beginning and were very determined to see this tissue repository become a reality. What I'd like to do next is introduce Allison Fraze of the Joshua Fraze Foundation and just let her say a few words about sort of the journey that she's been on and where things are headed. Allison?
Yes, thank you, Stacy, for having me on today. I am very passionate about this initiative with the tissue repository, and it's important in moving our communities forward towards the understanding of the pathology of the disease process and towards our hope of a treatment or a cure. Our journey started in 1995 when our son Joshua was diagnosed with myotubular myopathy. There was no research being conducted here in the U.S., so we started our foundation with guarded hope of finding answers. The part of the journey that I feel is very relevant to many of you on this webinar is you all have the ability to make a difference, be it a tissue donation or being involved in the grassroots efforts of reaching out to other affected family members, encouraging participation. In working with one of our world-renowned researchers in the space of congenital myopathies almost 2 decades ago, he expressed the importance and the need of tissue donation in order to understand the pathology and the disease process. So I took it upon myself to start reaching out to other parents, encouraging participation. And our community's involvement has truly been amazing. We are where we are today because of the collaborative efforts of many. I believe that wholeheartedly. But the beauty of the CMD-TR is the simplicity in the process for families and researchers. Having Stacy Cassette as an advocate truly streamlines the process for all involved. And I'm really proud to share that myotubular myopathy is in preparation moving towards gene therapy clinical trials.
Thank you, Allison. So now this is kind of the less interesting part of the talk, but I just wanted to go over what are some of the highlights of the consenting process. As everyone has said, it's really a very simple, easy process. The language in the consent forms is very much, common terminology. They're not lengthy forms. And basically in the biobanking consent form, it just explains that we are storing tissue for research purposes. Health information from, excuse me, you or the registry will be used and linked to your sample using an ID. Some of that information may include age at the time of the surgical procedure, gender, subtype, genetic mutation if known, motor function, respiratory function or support, or possibly other diagnoses if those are applicable. There are no additional risks to you and no direct benefit can be guaranteed. You can withdraw participation at any time, and there is an optional blood collection for establishment of cell lines that you can opt in or not on the form. I took a screenshot of what that form looks like. So over on the right-hand side is page 5 of that biobanking consent form, which is the signature page. You'll notice towards the top it says, I agree to the optional blood draw or I do not agree to the optional blood draw. And that's what I am referring to. This is something that I coordinate with the CMD Biobank. They are a very well-established laboratory specifically for developing cell lines. So we generally like to use their expertise whenever possible in order to get cell lines established at that facility, which are then available for distribution to scientists. This is typically done during a clinical visit so that, again, we can avoid any additional risk that a patient might have to endure. We don't want them enduring additional risks. So when you're having your annual physical, for example, oftentimes your doctor will order some blood work to be done to check your vitamin D level or your cholesterol, iron level maybe. So when that blood draw is being done anyway, what we can do is have a collection kit sent directly to your home. You bring the collection kit with, and you just ask the person that's drawing blood to please fill up the tube from the collection kit. I have not had any parent or individual tell me that there was ever any kind of problem with doing it that way. My personal experience with myself donating in this way and my daughter is that it was very, very simple. They just simply filled up the tubes provided for the CMD Biobank, and I put everything back into the box. I called up FedEx, asked them to come to my home to pick it up. They did exactly that. It was extremely simple and easy to do. And then in the boxes, sort of towards the bottom right-hand side, that's just where the subject would have a printed name and signature if that person is at least 18. If not, then parents and guardians sign right below there where it says name of legally authorized representative, where you would print your name and then sign right next to it. Another form that we are mandated to include is the HIPAA form. And this is the form that just talks about how your health information is used. So like I mentioned before, we will get your health information from you or from the CMD-TR, which is the registry. That's the database that holds all of your clinical information that you have populated with that information. And this is the data that's used to help manage your tissue samples. A number is assigned to your tissue sample so that your name does not ever identify that sample. And there happen to be two separate forms that we are mandated to use. One is the child HIPAA form, one is the adult HIPAA form. Only one needs to be signed depending upon what your age is as a donor. And then the assent form, as a couple people mentioned before, is the form that we have children between the ages of 7 and 17 sign to indicate that they understand that their tissue is going to be transferred and used for research purposes. The language in this form is just even more simple than the biobanking consent form. And it just basically says scientists want to discover what causes muscle diseases and how to cure them. There is no danger to the child. You will not be helped right now, but if a treatment is developed for your type of muscle problem, you may be helped in the future. You can quit at any time. And after you are 18, someone will contact you to see if you still want to keep your sample here and keep participating with our repository. The next thing that I would like to talk about are the potential barriers. So these are challenges that individuals and families might be facing that are preventing them from getting involved and participating in things like tissue donation. And we want to find out what we can do to help alleviate those challenges for families. So some things that have come up, and actually came up on Wednesday's talk as well, I put in here just to kind of get us thinking about it. And I would like to get thoughts from everyone in the audience today too, but some of the things that have come up are people are just simply unaware of the CMD tissue repository and its purpose. People don't realize how easy it is. Some people are postponing consenting, and what ends up happening is they then miss the opportunity because a surgery that was being scheduled, it's now too late to coordinate the process, or maybe that surgery has already happened by the time they think of it. And another one is that many support the idea but seem to be challenged in terms of returning the signed paperwork. So if anyone has other ideas, other thoughts on this, you can feel free to speak up at any time. No ideas? Do these seem like...
I have a question.
Oh, sure.
Sorry, a question that might be an idea. How difficult and how against HIPAA is it to speak with providers? We all had a genetic counselor and someone else at a big hospital that must see other people. How hard would it be to put the word out to them?
So are you asking how difficult is it for you to encourage other people through your hospital system to get involved?
Well, yeah, I guess that's the question. And how, I mean, no one at the facility where I went suggested or mentioned the repository or donation of tissue or donation of samples of blood or anything. How would it be difficult to ask for help from the medical community?
Well, we certainly can, and that's something that we've talked about doing. Any family who has already gotten involved, like your family, for example, you guys can go back to your providers and give them a flyer. You can give them our newsletter and encourage them to share that stuff with their other patients. They are not violating anything in doing that. It's just simply disseminating some information that the families might find helpful and would probably appreciate knowing about. We have started doing things like that at meetings where we know people are gathering, like the MDA clinical conference that was held a year ago. We had a neurologist that we've partnered with bring our flyers with, and we encourage that person to talk to others about this opportunity so that hopefully they'll start sharing the opportunity with patients that they have. But we are looking for additional ways that we can do just that. So did that answer your question sufficiently?
Yes, yeah, and in a couple of years we'll have an appointment with Emily where I'll do all that in San Francisco, so hopefully San Francisco will be involved.
Yeah, and it's just really like you said and others have said, the more people that we can share this with, the more people that will know about it, and it's really just reaching one person at a time and getting that information out there. In your case, it's reaching your neurologist. And if every family did that's involved, we would have another 45 neurologists that would be aware of something that wasn't on their radar before.
Exactly.
Good question. Anything else? So next, specifically questions that have come up. Some things are, what if my tissue sample is already at a research facility for my subtype? As we've always said, that tissue sample should stay exactly where it is. It's already being used for research, and that's really the service that we are here to serve, is to get the tissue to the researchers who need it to conduct their studies. So if you've already done that, then that tissue stays where it is. Now, in situations like that, there may be opportunities that will come up when, for example, you're having a surgical procedure done, and some of that discard tissue could then be transferred to the CMD tissue repository, and then you could have tissue residing in more than one place right at that time. And of course, once it's in our repository, the purpose then is to get that tissue to other researchers. So how that works is when someone requests tissue that is a match for your specific subtype, a portion of your tissue that we have banked goes to that researcher. While we try to meet whatever that researcher's needs may be, we cannot give up too much tissue to any one researcher. So if we had, for example, 200 milligrams of your tissue, banked, the researcher might say he or she would like to have 200 milligrams, but we're not going to give them all of it. So we would maybe give them 100 milligrams of your tissue, and we would then have 100 milligrams left over that can be shared with other researchers. Another question that comes up is, can I participate with more than one lab or study? And yes, of course, you can get involved with as many labs and as many studies as you choose to and as need to take place before a treatment or cure is found for your subtype. And we encourage people to get involved in as many ways as possible. The more people involved just means more momentum moving toward that goal, and it's just going to get us there faster. Does anyone else have any other questions? These could be questions specific to your situation or just in general about how biobanking works with us. Well, basically, more people consented means more tissue banked. More tissue banked facilitates research and treatment discovery. And that's really what we're here for. We want to provide a service to families that want to get involved, that want to contribute and participate. And we want to provide a service to scientists who need tissue in order to conduct their studies. So, in conclusion, if you have decided to complete your consent during this call, please return the forms to me. You can do that either by fax, scanning, and emailing. You can send it through the mail. As an alternative too, you can provide a clear photo or copy of your signature pages to me. And as long as that copy is clear enough that when I print it out on a regular letter size sheet of paper, it is readable, then we're good to go. So we hope that you will decide to consent. Basically just getting your tissue that's sitting in a hospital freezer somewhere used for something very purposeful and very important. It is a success, and that's really what we want to do, is get all available tissue resources used for research. So if there are not any other questions or comments, we will conclude right there. If there's anything that comes up, if you think of something later on, please contact me. I'm available by phone or email is usually best because I'm not in the office all the time to answer the phone. So, but I do get emails when I'm at remote locations. But yeah, just let me know if you have any questions or concerns. Thank you everyone for joining us today.
Thank you, Stacy, for hosting this.
Oh, you're very welcome.
And thank you, Sarah.
Thank you, Steve.
Enjoy the rest of your weekend.